would like to proceed to part 2 now and discuss free speech implications of the free church versus the incorporated church. Are churches at Bethel currently under the 501c3 limitation? Yes, according to the majority of the legal profession, we are considered under this provision due to the LBJ amendment to the tax code in 1954, and also our behavior, which communicates our acceptance of agreements on the limitations of our free speech, and claiming the charitable exemption on our individual federal income tax returns. However, assumed compliance is much different than contractual compliance. In other words, church incorporation, where the church body submits an application to become a corporation, signing a contract, agreeing to the restriction, the articles of incorporation. The key point here is that implied or assumed compliance is much different, legally speaking, than contractual compliance, where a church signs or enters an agreement with the state. Remember, the church is a creation of the state. Let's look at some quotes with regard to free speech. Baron de Montesquieu, a more certain way to attack religion is by favor, by the comforts of life, by the hope of wealth, not by what reminds one of it, but by what makes one forget it, not by what makes one indignant, but what makes men lukewarm. When other passions act on our souls, and those which religion inspires are silent. In the matter of changing religion, state favors are stronger than penalties. Baron de Montesquieu was highly influential in the writings of our framers of the Constitution. Let's look at some other quotes. These from Dr. D. James Kennedy. Dr. Kennedy, born 1930, died 2007, was a giant of evangelical Christian ministry. One of his quotes is, "The federal government has proved a tremendous impediment to the ongoing work of Christians. In all laws they have passed against Christian schools, gagging the church, taxation, and all kinds of things they have done. They have made it harder for the church to exercise its prerogatives and to preach the gospel." Another quote, take the last presidential election. He was speaking of the election of 2004. "There were numbers of things that I knew that I was never able to say from the pulpit, because if you advance the cause of one candidate or impede the cause of another, you lose your tax exemption. That would have been disastrous not only for the church, but for our school, for our seminary, for everything. So you are gagged. You cannot do that. The IRS, a branch of our government, has succeeded in gagging Christians." Let's look at one more quote. This from an insider, IRS insider, Steve Nestor. I am not the only IRS employee who's wondered why churches go to the government and seek permission to be exempted from a tax they didn't owe to begin with, and to seek a tax-deductible status that they've always had anyway. Many of us have marveled at how church leaders want to be regulated and controlled by an agency of government that most Americans have prayed would just get out of their lives. Churches are in an amazingly unique position, but they don't seem to know or appreciate the implications of what it would mean to be free of government control. Steve Nestor, IRS Revenue Officer, retired. The previous quotes were taken from a website called Heal Our Land Ministries. Heal Our Land Ministries empowers churches by teaching them how to lawfully organize, free of civil government subservience, so that the church may once again have the freedom to speak to the vital moral issues of the day, practice real freedom of religion, and thereby recapture the significant place of influence the church once held in society. And I'll end with one more quote from Congressman George Hansen, who said, "It's impossible to have religious freedom in any nation where churches are licensed to the government. Aside from the serious legal ramifications, there are immense theological ones as well. A corporation is a creature of the state. Moreover, the state is sovereign over the corporation. At one time, the public policy decreed that America is a Christian nation governed by Christian principles. We must now take cognizance of the fact that America is a post-Christian nation. The state no longer acknowledges the authority of Jesus Christ and, in point of fact, is hostile to it. Since the state is sovereign over the corporation, we should carefully ponder who is really sovereign over the incorporated church. Let me conclude with the takeaway from these slides. I think that from a historical viewpoint, incorporation is not the way to go. From a legal viewpoint, I can see the reasons for it, but I do not discount the possible advantages of remaining a free church and not signing the free speech restrictions contract with the state. From a biblical viewpoint, incorporation is not the way to go. Does this mean that we are exposing our pastor or our staff to unnecessary threats? Not at all. Our pastor has two great advocates, God Almighty, who will fight alongside of us in all battles, and Bethel Church, who poured out our love to our pastor Doug when he was in the hospital recently. We will come to your aid also. Pastor, we love you. Christy, Kayla, and Alyssa, we love you. We love our associate pastors as well, Keith and Andrew. This concludes the end of my talk. Next, I'll present two motions to the church. First motion to the meeting. I move to make safety and risk management paramount at Bethel Baptist by incorporating into our Constitution. I would start with immediate safety and risk assessments, generate a safety and risk assessment plan, take immediate actions and steps to address risks, and make recommendations to the church staff and the Constitution and Bylaws Committee. The second motion I make is to separate Bethel Baptist Church from the state, develop a plan to be presented at the next business meeting to become a free church. This involves removal of our 501c3 status, giving maximum freedom of free speech to our pastor and our staff and our Sunday school leaders.